Wow, Juno 106. I don't have a Juno 106.
Well, that makes one thing you don't have. This is kind of the, the great democratizer of synthesizers because they're not that expensive. They sound amazing and they do a lot. And you can really learn synthesis really well on one of these because it's very straightforward. There's no menu diving and it just always sounds pretty good. The drawback is that and it's not necessarily a drawback, it's just a different technology, is that the oscillators are digital. Yeah. It's a digitally controlled oscillator, which is actually still analog in some ways. But all 6 voices share a common clock and they're all perfectly in phase with one another. So if you lend me your hands, when we play 6 notes, 6 Cs, then they'll all be in perfect phase. You gonna hit that bottom C? Whereas on, a Prophet 5, there would be a little bit of beating and niceness there, but because that phase lock loop, that's how it is. So
yeah. And then the modulation path on it is it's built in then.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So, you have a LFO, which can control the frequency, the filter, and the pulse width, which sounds great. You can delay the LFO. You got a sub-oscillator, which is, again, perfectly in phase with the root.
Oh, so you get a couple Is it the same oscillator or is it actually another oscillator?
It's just a basic sub-oscillator circuit.
Like octave divider?
Yeah, exactly. It's just a divider.
And then you have how good is the high pass?
It's cool. It's global, so it's not like voltage controllable or sweepable. But it's also stepped.
Oh, okay.
And actually, 0 is technically a boost. It's actually boosting the bass rather than actually high passing it. The VCF is the same as most of the Roland stuff from that era. The IR3109 filter, which same thing that's in the Jupiter 8, the Juno 60 and the 6, and many other products. You have one envelope generator for the VCA and the VCF. Somewhat of a drawback, but it keeps things simple and easy.
It's simple, and then you get the signature chorus on the end of it.
Of course, yeah. So if we...
All right, so it helps the DCOs out a little bit. If you want a chorus sound, you get some
big time.
Some change, like aperiodicity type of aperiodicity, and then you have 8 banks of 8.
That's right. Wow, I'm totally gonna forget how many presets that adds up to.
64.
64. But you get that twice because you got Group B as well, which then you get an entire other set.
Like
so it's 128. Yeah.
Like the drum machines, right? They do that. You get it again.
Yeah, and you'll get polyphonic key assignment modes. You get portamento, which you don't get on the earlier ones.
Okay.
And the bender is digital, which is actually nice because it goes a perfect octave up and down, whereas on the earlier ones, the 60 and the Jupiter 8, you kind of never know where it's going to go.
So these are a little more affordable, right? They're still not cheap.
Nowadays, they're not. I mean, they were trading for over $3,000 at some point. Now they're kind of resting around 25, which I think is pretty fair. But that's within reach, I would say, for most people who want a serious piece of gear.
And this is a serious piece of gear.
Absolutely. This is actually my favorite Juno. People always ask me what my favorite one is. This is my favorite.
Okay, so there's the Juno 6 and the Juno 60.
That's right.
What's the order and why?
The 6 came first, and it was kind of like, just the Jupiter 8 Mini kind of. It was 6 voices. Oh. And then the Korg Polysticks came out, and then they're like, well, this has patch memory. Now we have to add that to the Juno. So then they made the Juno 60, which uses the exact same analog board, except it has a different control board to do patch management. And they actually handle the patch management only up on those boards, which is kind of interesting. No MIDI on those, and then they came out the 106, which is like a refined version of that, and with MIDI built in and everything. And it's a great synthesizer.
So this is the one you like. This is the refined version of the Juno series.
Yeah, personally.
Before they brought. And what about like the reissues?
I don't know if they've really done a proper analog reissue.
I think the
of
little
these
guys, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're fun. Yeah, they're cool. If you need that type of sound, I'm sure it'll do the trick. But I mean, nothing beats the real thing, especially the hands-on control.
But are those digital oscillators and digital everything else?
Yeah, digital everything.
Everything. Yeah. So that's a big difference.
Big difference.
Because digital oscillators, like the SynthX is an awesome synthesizer and it has digital oscillators, but everything else is analog, and it's like it's a one of a kind, one of the best.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So digital oscillators isn't like a curse or
Yeah, I
anything.
mean, even the Synthex, good example.
That's what I just.
Yeah, I
that's
know,
what I'm
I know.
talking about. That's like,
You can't argue with the Synthex.
no,
Yeah.
it grows on me more and more, and it's one of the most unique flavors. So, well, okay, let's see what's the difference here.
First, I want you to play it. So I'm going to put this patch.
You play it.
Oh, you play it. You're a much better player than me.
I don't think so. Now, are they active right away? Like,
Yeah.
oh. And I can drop it down. Oh, it goes really low. That's just one oscillator?
Yeah, I hear the sub oscillator in there as well.
I'm just adding it now. Okay, and then there's pulse width modulation too.
Yeah.
And it's only LFO?
You can sweep it manually. I don't think you can sweep it through the envelopes. Yeah, you cannot.
I hear it, yeah. You can sweep it, oh no. You can sweep it with LFO, right? Like that. There it is. I love pulse width modulation. And then I can add that LFO again, right? Or did I already do that? Oh, wow. That's with the sub. And everything's fully polyphonic, right? Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, it looks like you could do a lot.
You
Or I
definitely
want
can.
to see the inside.
Okay, well, let's show you. So I'm going to turn it off. Put it in my cord. This is a very easy synth to work on, all things considered. So
Easy.
Basically, from right to left we'll go. So you got the power supply over here where you don't want to stick your fingers, especially if your fingers are wet. And then over here you have your CPU board. This handles patch management, and also the keyboard plugs into there, I believe. It might plug into there. I could be mistaken. But anyway, this is really where patch management happens. And then this is your analog board where it takes the key assignments here. These are actually the digital oscillators right here on these two timer chips. And then those get wave shaped into the saw wave. So this one, unlike we said earlier, these ones do start off as a square wave and then get wave shaped into saw waves on these little black epoxied modules right here. Now the Juno 106 is most famous in the tech world for all having the exact same problem, which is that the voice chips die. That's the 817A chips, and there's a myriad of clones out on the market, and we make our own, which we feel is the most authentic, and that is this guy. So this has the filter and a VCA on it, and you know, it sounds exactly like the original. It uses an original type 3109 chip, and yeah, there's a perfect clone. But there are other clones on the market, but we like ours the best. And again, all of these have the same problem, and they all need their chips changed. So that's why you see so many of them in these in this shop. We actually have one person who just works here full time working on these.
So by necessity, you came up with this.
By necessity, yeah. Right. I mean, we were spending thousands of dollars a month on getting other people's clones, and I was like, I can make a better one. So, you know, now we just make them. My wife puts these together. Yeah, but you got six voices there, and you got your bender board, and then over here you have your BBDs for the chorus, and the timers for the BBDs, and of course the output circuitry. Yeah, Bucket Brigade. I don't remember what D stands for, but the Bucket Brigade chips are there, and yeah, I mean that's really all there is to it with these. They're really simply laid out. But, you know, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the Prophet 5, not much has changed because you still have the computer, which takes all this data, which is all here. You know, it's the same thing as like a Z80, but more complicated and has the ROM inside of it. But then you're still spitting out to the same type of 4051 chips into the same sample and hold stuff that feeds control voltages to these analog modules. So it really isn't that much different, you know?
But what's over here?
This is patch management.
Oh, so you said that first.
Yeah.
So we have power supply, patch management.
Key assignments.
Yeah, this is like the brains, right? And it's
these are kind of both a brain. They're very much in touch with each other.
And it turns into the voltage, and then this is all the sound generating stuff, just all here.
Yeah. So you have your oscillating wave shapers here, oscillator wave shaping. So again, starts as a square wave here, turns into a saw wave and the sub oscillator here, and then your filter and VCA are on these chips.
A lot simpler.
Yeah.
And then these guys are just the controls, right?
Yeah.
It's the board underneath the controls, and then it sends the info. And does it do the same thing where it's kind of like a loop where it tunes things and fixes things?
It doesn't need to tune itself because it's all the PLL. So.
But it doesn't have to calibrate the filter or anything.
You
like
do have
that?
to calibrate the filters themselves. It doesn't do it for you. So you have all these trimmer
But that's what I meant.
here.
There's no like automate, like whatever intelligence where it's
No.
It's not like the Prophet.
There is none. That's right. But the way it buses the controls to the computer and everything is all very similar to the Prophet, if not almost identical. Which again kind of goes to show just how innovative the Prophet was for everybody.
Because how much later is this?
This is 1980. Oh my, I'm gonna sound like an idiot. I think it's 84.
Oh, it's not that much later. Was a Prophet 80?
Well, the first Prophets are 79.
Okay, but like so 79. It's still only 4 years later.
Yeah.
But then you have a company like Roland who's going to, mass produce the things in a way different way because they're just a mega company compared to the size of Sequential. What would make a particular synth a doorstop where it's just not really of any use?
It all comes down to its ability to be repaired, and that comes down to a couple different factors. Number one is the size of components. That's kind of the cliche answer, but it's legit nonetheless. So you see all these chips. These are on what's called a through-hole board. If you want to change the slider, you just desolder it from here. You take the slider out, and you can get any old slider that doesn't even fit this footprint and stick it in there and jump a wire, and it'll work again. And that's fine. Now, a lot of stuff nowadays, or pretty much everything, is made with what's called surface mount devices, which is actually what's on these chips that we make and was on the original chips as well. They're much, much smaller. So this is a capacitor that would be the same as one of these, but it's much, much smaller. But the problem with even newer stuff than this, because this is kind of one of the last really repairable synthesizers, is that these packages become infinitely smaller. Really, 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 really tiny. You could barely pick it up with tweezers. This can still be hand assembled and fixed. If you really wanted to change one of these chips, you could. Those original SMD chips that would have been in there fail all the time nowadays, and we replaced them with our own that we can hand assemble. Therefore, it's repairable. Same with the computer. If the computer dies, you can still get this chip.
So this isn't a doorstop then?
No, not at all. You can still get this, and then you can just put an EEPROM right here, and it'll read right off of that.
Everything you can pretty much. But is that the cutoff, 1983, 1984?
Not quite. And you can still make things this way if you wanted to. There's not really a cutoff. It's more just the way the companies evolved with their own product.
Depends on the company, but more or less, when you get into the later 80s, right, it starts to be not really repairable.
That's right. So the other thing is software. So these things do have, code inside of these really weird looking chips. And the earlier devices had an EEPROM right here. So that would have been like the ROMs I showed you in the Prophet. And that would be interfacing with this chip. So this chip is doing the actual work, but reading from the instructions here. And if this chip dies, you can just get the code and put it on an EEPROM and put it here and put a new controller there, and then they'll work because it knows to just read off of here. So there's no chance of this thing ever being unfixable.
How do you put code on a chip?
Oh, there's the devices for that. We have like EEPROM burners.
You do that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And you get the code from where?
Usually from reading them off of earlier ones. So like a really early Juno would have a ROM here. We would take it out and read the information.
Oh, and you
off
can
of it
read like a
and
ROM
save it.
reader.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you put it in RAM, and then you put it.
We put it in a new ROM.
Yeah, but it has to go off that chip into a holding area, right? Or does it go directly from chip to chip?
Yeah, it goes into the an old Windows computer.
Yeah, so a computer holds it in its own RAM, and then you burn. Wow, that's so these are totally repairable. So these things are always going to be worth it.
These will outlive us, no questions asked.
So if somebody's looking to get into a synth,
and if you couldn't even get this, say one day you couldn't get these anymore, some guy could easily add something else that would take its place because it's through hole and all the pins are accessible. Whereas when you're dealing with something that has 400 pins and they're impossible to solder to, you can't do that anymore. It just becomes an impossibility.
Is this the first, this is the investment synth for somebody?
I think this should be everybody's first synthesizer. When I first started out, everyone's first synth was a DX7, and I thought that was cool, but I think this should be everyone's first synth because you can actually program it.
It's not, DX7 is too hard.
You cannot program those. You can flip through patches, but this you can actually program.
Yeah, you need immediacy when you first, because you want to enjoy it in the beginning. And the DX7's at an advanced level worth the fight, but it's like you got to really dig into the thing and remember where you are. This looks very straightforward.
Yeah, what you see is what you get.
And the DX7, is that as easily fixable?
No.
Yeah, so there's that too. So you're
But the thing about the DX7 is that there's so many of them that there's thousands and thousands of parts units. So they can always be fixed by cannibalizing another
swapping out.
Yeah, because I think Yamaha made like over 100,000 of them.
Yeah.
And they made a lot of these too. I think, I don't even want to try to guess the number, but it's definitely in the tens of thousands, these. But yeah, definitely should be everybody's first synth.
But this you don't swap out. It's worth putting the love in. You build your own custom boards and that sort of thing.
Much better to just do that. And even the Bucket Brigades are available again. Yeah, you can get everything for these.
And it sounds pretty great.
They sound great, especially for the price.